Hello. So I'm Korin. I'm from the Department of Economics, and along with Jay and Louise, who also work in the College of Social Science, the three of us have been working on an alumni mentoring scheme. So we're going to have about 10 minutes, and we're going to try and run through some of the basics, and then hopefully there'll be a bit of time for question and answer. I'll start us off, then Jay, and then Louise will finish us off. So if you'd like more information from any of us afterwards, I'm sure you can find us later. So we're going to describe the program, talk a bit about the evaluation that we did and some of the successes that we found and the challenges, and then we'll talk very briefly about the next step, because it's a bit of a question mark about what we do next year, and there'll be a bit of time for questions. So the context. There was a pilot last year in the Department of Politics, sorry.
With media, sorry.
There was a small pilot where they looked at inviting alumni to come back and mentor undergraduates. And so we're really building on that pilot and opening it up to basically the entire College of Social Science. And that involved Jay and Louise deciding that they wanted to employ an intern. I decided that I wanted to employ an intern to do that. And then us realizing that it was a bit silly to have two interns that weren't talking to each other. So then we developed it into a college-wide project between us. And we also know that there's evidence of other projects happening in other institutions. So we thought this is an area that we want to build on, think about for the future. These were the main aims that we were hoping students would get out of the scheme. So, I mean, we wanted to match students to alumni using the information we knew about what they wanted to do in the future. We wanted to promote career discussions in that relationship. We were hoping that students would access particular information about industries and roles, so things that I can't necessarily tell them about a particular job that somebody in that job would be able to say. And then overall simply, aid their personal and professional development more generally. So what do we do? There's sort of three things we had to do. So we'll start with the first one, which was preparing the students and the mentors. So we had a mentor and a mentee application process. So we could sort of sift out the ones that were really genuinely serious about providing the time and the dedication to the project. We then had an alumni networking event. This was partly to launch the scheme. So there we are. These are there were about 10 tables or 8 tables, I think, of alumni. I can't remember how many were there, something like that. And we had about 40 or 50 students there for the night. And they did a sort of speed networking event where they went around each table. And the reason for that was so that the students would have the opportunity to meet lots of different alumni before they were actually matched with an alumni. Because in some ways we weren't really sure that they would know why they would want to meet with an alumni, or what kind of career they wanted to go into. So we thought this was a good way of launching the scheme, but also giving them some taste of what it might be like. And as a result, we were there until about 10 o'clock that night. We had to actually kick the students out the door and the alumni because they were having a great time, and some of them at the end of it said, I really, really want that person to be my mentor. Can that be kind of possible? And there were quite a few very popular mentors that night. So it was a big success in terms of students sort of understanding what it was going to be like and identifying some of the things that they wanted out of the scheme. So then following that, we then asked them a bit more about their career aspirations, because that would then inform us in the matching process. And we did a prep session before the students even were given information about their mentors, so that they had some idea of what we were expecting from them in terms of professional behaviour. So that we prepared the students at that stage and the mentors. And then we did the matching. I say we, actually Jay and Louise. Jay and Louise and I didn't do any of the matching, thankfully, but our interns have both left the institution now, so they can't be here to tell us about it. So the interns helped with the matching. They helped to identify alumni based on the career aspirations that the students had told us about. So if they said, I desperately want an accountant, and we didn't have an accountant ready, then we could go and look for one. And a lot of that was done through LinkedIn, though not necessarily all of it. So some of it was existing contacts, and some of it was finding new ones. The monitoring part then took place. Once we'd given the students the details, we then supported the building of the relationship. And one of the things that we did was provide the students with a draft email. So we said, this is how you start the relationship. And we made sure that they had to include information about why they wanted to have a mentor, what their career aspirations were, what they were hoping to get out of the relationship, how they were going to be in touch in the future, how many times, that kind of thing. And then we had regular updates from the mentors and from the students. And about 20% of the relationships required troubleshooting. So we had to sort of, some of them, they weren't getting in touch, and we had to sort of jostle them along a bit. So the final bit was the evaluation. And this all took place through this academic year. So we've really, I think we've emailed the report finally on Friday. So we've been doing evaluation and thinking about how it's worked right up until now. We had feedback from all of the events that we held. So the alumni networking event, the preparation sessions, got feedback from students and alumni. We also asked students and alumni after the mentoring relationship sort of ended, what did you think? But possibly more importantly, is we asked the students to do blogs throughout the process. So then we could sort of analyze what they'd said was happening in that relationship. Because we thought, well, we can match them and say, well, we've matched them, but we don't really know what's happened unless they tell us what happened in those conversations. And then finally, we used a quality identifier process that we found through the University of Derby, which is a process of looking at the hallmarks of a really good online mentoring scheme. So just to give us an idea of where we might be wanting to improve for next time. So that's what we did. I'm going to pass over to Jay, who's going to talk about what we learned from some of the evaluation.
So there was two elements to the evaluation. One is the evaluation that we've done with students, and then with the alumni mentors as well. So the main points with student evaluation, this graph, if you can't read what it says it's demonstrating what students have gained as a result of their participation in the alumni mentoring scheme. And the three areas which students have highlighted as kind of the strongest are an increase or improvement in their confidence, industry-specific knowledge, and advice and guidance from their mentors. So the bottom two in particular, we were hoping that we would be achieving with students in their relationships with each of their mentors. And it does show the value of having somebody who's linked to the university through their degree, who is now in a professional work environment, who can give that support to current students, really. And it also allows current students the access to information that we can't give as specific information about from the university, I guess. If you've got somebody who is working at Deutsche Bank, for example, they're going to be able to tell a student who's interested in working for them more of what it's like, rather than us giving them sort of an overview. The next graph here, the types of recruitment advice that students received from their mentor, which is really important to us because, again, we can give advice to students through the Career Development Service and other things through the curriculum. But again, sometimes it's that more personal advice and some of the questions that students might want to ask which are kind of important to them. And this was multiple choice, so some of these overlap, but the three areas that students really got a lot of valuable advice, certainly, is CVA advice and feedback, interview advice in particular, and more broadly sort of applications and advice around what an employer that they're applying to would look for those, whether it's related to an employer or the industry. We've just got a few quotes that we'll give you a bit of time to read through. So this is a student from sociology in the second year, an economics second year student, and one from criminology also in the second year. Okay. The evaluation that we've done with mentors isn't too dissimilar to that we've done with students, and a really positive indicator is over 95% of the mentors that we've surveyed have rated the overall experience as a mentor on the scheme as either good or excellent, which is fantastic to hear. A small number felt that it offered them a really good development opportunity, which is something that we hadn't advertised it as. It does clearly offer that, but it's not something that we explicitly said they'll be gaining, but it is something that we're also looking into in terms of developing the scheme in the future, in particular looking at the coaching skills and also kind of the CPD elements of being a mentor. Matthew McCarthy, who is an alumni from about 5 or 6 years back, this is what he had to say about the scheme. He did take part in the pilot, and so his comments on the scheme this year. To quickly get on that side. We've got a video that we've done with one of the mentors from this year.
I would recommend the mentoring scheme to other alumni because they can be that one person that can inspire students or inspire someone who's in doubt of where they can go or what they want to do. So I would say it's great to be part of an inspiration for someone, no matter how small or how big. It can give someone the motivation to realise maybe, you know what, they're not interested in that industry that you're working for, but they want to go into something else. So I think that's great, and it really, really does help. Secondly, I think it's great to be able to tell someone else that you're part of a mentoring scheme. So if mentors did tell their line managers, oh, I'm part of a mentoring scheme for a university that I did go to, I think it would be great, and it does show early leadership skills and something that you're really interested in.
Sorry.
Oops. It takes a minute for some reason to go back onto the... You have to speed on through.
Sorry. So the feedback that we received, particularly from mentors, Jordan there, he was a student last year and a mentor this year, has been really positive. So obviously it's a really good indication, not just that our students are benefiting from it, but we're also continuing relationships with alumni and utilising them for benefit for current students as well.
So in terms of successes, we do feel that based on where we've come from the pilot to the first year rollout across the college, that it has been a very successful scheme. And I think the engagement from both students and alumni and the participation all the way through really does support this. So this year we had 75 students engaged and completed the programme this year from across 5 departments, and 52 out of 53 alumni who originally signed up actually completed the scheme, which again I think shows really good conversion rates. In terms of feedback, 95% of both students and mentors would recommend the scheme, which is a really positive indicator. And 91% of students did report that they had gained either improved confidence, industry-specific knowledge, and careers advice and guidance, which does show some element of impact. And in terms of how the students are actually able to reflect, 95%, so the vast majority of students did complete at least one blog entry. And from those, we were able to keep track of the conversations and where they're up to in terms of their own progression. In terms of other successes, I think most particularly the re-engagement with alumni. In many cases, we've been able to rekindle relationships with alumni for departments where they might have become disengaged. But in the majority of cases, we have actually increased connections with alumni for several departments. And there is potential there to open up opportunities either on a research basis, but also collaboration with senior professionals in the industry. Beyond this, there's also, I guess, added attraction for alumni to get involved with the university again. There's that professional development that they can get involved in, the coaching, leadership skills that they'll gain from supervising and mentoring students through the scheme. And it's a nice way really of bringing back our alumni to the university and re-engaging with their departments. Based on the feedback, overwhelmingly the feedback was to extend the length of the scheme. So we partnered the students, matched the students with the mentors kind of around sort of Christmas and January, so they only really got one semester of valuable mentoring experience. So I think going forwards we would like to extend this so that we've got the majority of 2 semesters to actually engage with their mentors. More events and an opportunity for face-to-face. The majority of this was done by email, occasionally Skype and phone calls, and a small number of alumni were able to meet with their mentees, and they found that really beneficial. And finally, I think from our own perspective, in terms of preparing the students, whilst we worked on how they could communicate professionally and the etiquette of I guess, communicating with their alumni, we would emphasise the element of research in terms of what the alumni's role is in their organisation, and really what kind of questions they can be asking to make sure they get the full benefit of this experience. So as Korin mentioned, next steps are a little bit vague at the moment. It is the first year that we've rolled it out to 5 departments. So we are in the process of confirming what resources we need to actually develop this, and we would like to incorporate more departments in this scheme going forwards. This year we had 2 interns, one based in the Department of Economics and one across the college more broadly to support Jane and myself. But because our interns have done a lot of work around the framework for this scheme, we believe that it could be quite easily run next year with just one intern to coordinate the scheme going forwards. And we would therefore like to increase the number of departments that are involved in this, particularly with the merger of the 2 colleges. There's a lot of potential there to offer careers provision and employability provision that is not necessarily work experience, internships related. It's quite an easy way of providing this provision for departments. And we're here to offer our knowledge and experience of actually coordinating this scheme. We've got materials that we'd love to share with departments who are interested in getting involved. And you know, for consistency's sake, it would be great if we can have one scheme running as opposed to several silos across the university. So if anyone is involved, I'm sure these slides will be distributed and people can get in contact with us. And we have had conversations with Darrow, who are interested in developing a university-wide scheme. I think that's a couple of years off yet, so we're just still running this as it is. And just to finish off, we sent thank you cards to all our alumni for participating in the scheme. And this is just a tweet that we found from one of our alumni sharing their enthusiasm for participating in the scheme, which I thought was quite a nice touch. So I'd like to invite any questions.
Okay, thanks very much. Are there any questions about this scheme? Yes.
With the combination of the College of Social Science and the College of Arts and Humanities, will the scheme extend to that one new college, I think?
I think in terms of resource for the next year, that would be the simplest way of expanding the scheme. But we have, I guess, explored different options, and in terms of the costing, we thought one option might be that departments could opt in with a fee to actually support the running of the scheme, so it could then expand beyond the college.
What was the hit rate in terms of, because you said there was an application process, so, and you had 75 students actually taking part.
Yes.
What was the sort of success rate in terms of applications?
Well, the 75 students who completed. We had initially there were I think 120, so we've got the information here.
Yeah.
All right.
So 120 signed up, 80 were matched, and then in terms of completing the scheme.
Yeah, so to be matched, they had students were expected to attend the prep session before being matched, so that was where there's been some drop off.
But we did look into similar schemes, and this is actually a really good retention rate.
Yeah, oh yes, yeah, that sounds excellent.
You do a lot.
Yeah.
So we were quite pleased with that, really.
It'll be really interesting to do the, I mean, I guess one of the evaluations is the long-term follow-up then, the longitudinal bit, and see what happens when they come out the other end and what their employability record is compared with other students who haven't done the scheme. Sorry.
Do the alumni have any training?
No, we had a handbook that we created more for the framework of the actual scheme, so that they know what sort of questions to profile students on. But I think that's one area that we'd like to develop, because that's obviously an attraction for alumni to get involved as part of their personal development. So we have looked into CPD and how we can approach the scheme for alumni.
Were there any? Did you have any? Because I guess one of the risks of this is obviously, whilst it's a great way of bringing alumni back into the university, it potentially also there is risk there as well. What kind of things did you have in place to ensure that it was a positive experience for both alumni?
Our interns really were doing much of the management around that. So there were regular check-ins both with the alumni and students, and we did encourage students where there were issues of either not having heard back, or even with alumni if they hadn't received any contact from the student. That's where, as Korin pointed out earlier on, it was really a matter of us then communicating with the student. 75 was the completion out of 80 who were then matched, because there was about 5 students who did drop out of the scheme at various points, and that was just something we managed between the alumni and our interns who were coordinating it, really.
They quite helpfully sort of red, amber and green the relationships, so we knew the ones that were in trouble, which were not many. Obviously they took up most of our conversation, And then sometimes the three of us would get involved if we thought we needed to repair a relationship. But I mean, thankfully there wasn't any.
Yeah, there were no serious cases at all, really.
Yeah.
Did they have to sort of sign any sort of agreement on both sides, or sort of terms of engagement with the student and the nice side?
Not on this side, although we did meet up with Democracy University and they have something similar. I think that's something we'd perhaps think about doing next year. I think just to make sure that the expectations are there.
Not too heavy-handed, but yeah.
I saw another hand up, yes.
I'm interested in what sort of students actually signed up to take part in this.
So it was penultimate and final year undergraduates from the departments that are listed there at the moment. We are, at the moment, if it continues next year, it will likely kind of stay in the same format, really. But depending on kind of resources and finances, that would depend on whether it can then expand to whether it's postgraduates and further, really. One thing that we've explored is actually using some of the distance learning students that are in different departments as mentors, because often we found that with those that we've spoken to, they're actually professionals in work already and they're doing a distance learning degree to continue their development, but they're actually very well placed to be a mentor to students. In a month we were expecting around sort of 2 interactions, and it is e-mentoring mainly, so that might be over email or via Skype or whatever, so it's not too intensive in terms of use of time, but we would like to encourage more face-to-face interactions.
Did you map any of the people that joined the scheme with other careers-related activities? I'm just wondering if they're the kind, the keen students that do the less
That do
good or
everything,
that do this well, or could you be reaching a different group of students to which this might appeal where the other things don't?
We haven't yet. I mean, it's something that we would like to do as we develop it, really. I think it goes back to the point of actually 5 years from now, how many of the students that have been mentored on the scheme, where are they now? Has this been of any benefit to them? But we haven't at the moment. I mean, anecdotally, you see some of the same students at different events, but we couldn't put a figure to it.
Can I just ask about the asterisk next to management? Was it a special case?
Well, Jane, Louise, and I, between the three of us, none of us actually cover management technically, but we thought we didn't really particularly want to leave them out just because of the technicality. So there was probably less effort made to recruit them simply because there wasn't someone in that department. But we thought there's no reason not to include them. It's not a great deal of resource demand on us, and especially because my intern was focusing mainly on economics. I just thought it was absolutely fine for him to then branch out to management. So.